dive in and do this.
Anyway, so we were just talking about a piece called Mandeville, which is the third track on the album. Right, so we're trying to establish who came up with the idea of choosing that tune. We don't really know. But I think the main theme in Mandeville is the sound of it. Very unique, very different from what we normally would record or even play, mostly because of the 3-piece French horn section, which 1/3 of which was your dad.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. And we talked about that when earlier, you did your podcast with me on a completely different day from today.
Day,
And another, we'll talk about the horn thing, but another great, apart from the fact that your dad came to help us out and play French horn on that, and was it Hello Goodbye was the other one?
Yeah.
The other great thing about that was Karen and Colin, who were the other two horn players. So Karen was on the original album ever recorded by the Doncaster Youth Jazz Orchestra.
On French horn?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. I didn't
and
know
she's
that.
on. Do you remember seeing the picture of it in the Jazz Centre? It's like it was
on the
framed.
staircase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's on that.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and she would have been, I don't know, a teenager at that time.
That's mental, isn't it?
Her and Keith Alderson, who's now like the main repair guy in Doncaster, the only repair guy in Doncaster, they were the French horn players, and there were flutes on it and everything. So it was a much bigger kind of like affair back then.
Right.
But
Yeah.
she's on the very first recording. So it's brilliant that it comes full circle, and she's on maybe the last, certainly for our generation. So yeah, the fact that she brought Colin, who's her partner, who's a great horn player, who's also involved kind of indirectly through the music service and the French exchange in Limone, and they kind of kept that going once it kind of had to stop for political reasons in France. They then took it over. So there's all this kind of like intertwining of different stories of music in Doncaster within this one chart. And I think I'll also say, when I first heard this, I think I walked in to the rehearsal room halfway through it being played, and you were just running through it, and I wasn't playing it, I wasn't really paying attention, and I was thinking, oh, this is a bit weird. Like, where's this going? Didn't really get it. Again, much like with Hello and Goodbye, didn't really get it. But when I was sat in the control room at British Grove and I heard the horns kick in,
Were you not on
no,
Mandeville?
I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
It's a real, it's a mood piece, isn't it? I think it's so slick. It's in that kind of Hollywood, LA arrangers. And, Pat Williams, one of his pieces, is incredible composer, arranger,
Right.
who I think had sadly passed that year, maybe. So it was nice that we could record that, one of his pieces. But yeah, it is one of those ones that for sure, especially with the French horns and those lush harmonies, and then when it breaks out into the big band shout in the middle.
Shout in the middle, yeah.
And afterwards all the extended percussion as well that we incorporated. Yeah, it's a total departure from it. I would say anything I've heard the band do before.
Definitely. And also the fact that it features trombone. Your trombone doesn't often get featured. Obviously, Lee did a great job on the solo. You don't often get trombone players featured in big bands other than the odd solo. So it was just, the whole thing's just really different, basically. Did your dad enjoy the experience?
He loved it. Yeah. I think it's a very different piece to Hello and Goodbye. And obviously there's just one French horn part on that. So him being with three of them in that sort of capacity, I think it's more of a symphonic sound that it adds to that piece as well. Yeah. So although he did a great job on Hello and Goodbye, I think he'll have found it more on his
because you're in a section.
I suppose.
Yeah, it just sounds so powerful. It's like I would love to do a gig with the band where we only do songs with French horn parts in them, because there's enough material out there to do it. Yeah, like the Chuck Mangione stuff, and I think doesn't Bob Florence use French horns as well quite a bit.
I don't think it's like a staple, but he probably used it at some point.
But it'd just be great to do a gig where there's like a French horn section in the band, rather than they come in for one piece or two pieces.
Yeah, I always think back to the sort of old Henry Mancini pieces. They really take you to a time and place. French horn section and all the the percussion parts and
What's the Billy May stuff as well? That's got big fat brass.
Yeah.
Is it big? what's it? Big Fat
I think
Brass?
that, yeah.
I think it's that, and they're French horns there. I mean, they're probably got like tubas and stuff like that on that as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
it just adds a different sort of like aspect to the music, doesn't it?
Yeah,
adds a different level to it.
Again, a departure from, we're 3 tracks in now, and 2 of the 3 tracks are the sort of thing we probably wouldn't have picked previously.
Yeah.
But like I was saying on one of the episodes I did with Dad, this whole album was a totally different approach because in previous incarnations, we were a band that was effectively a gigging band with a regular set, and we knew which songs we liked and what we wanted to record. But this one, because it was not done remotely in the sense that, it wasn't recorded remotely, but we had to almost create the project remotely because everyone, A, it was COVID, and B, everyone's, spread out across the UK. So the way that we chose the songs, or that you guys chose the songs, was totally different because we weren't playing them, So you had to do things like meet up and have a listen to some stuff.
I do remember though when John agreed that we were going to do this project, that we sort of said to him, right, this is your baby. You've got carte blanche to pick what you want. What do you want to pick? Yeah. And I can remember he said to me, I've recorded everything that I've got that I want to record, so I want this to be more of a collaboration rather than me just sort of just going, right, this, and this. Yeah. And so that's why it's been different, really.
Yeah.
We did start with a lot of pieces, though, didn't we? We played a lot of stuff to get to the 12 pieces that have ended up being the album,
I think that's partly why it took us so long to do it.
Yeah.
But also, I think we were afforded time because we knew we were in lockdown. It wasn't going to be any time soon before we actually got in the studio. I think we probably thought, oh, well, let's maybe try loads of different stuff,
Yeah, and it was nice for your dad to ultimately be able to pick the stuff that he liked, and for the players as well to judge things by people's reaction. And for sure, some pieces took longer to get into, and I think that was very telling. That stuff like It Makes Sense and Body and Soul. In the studio, they went down very quickly because the band were so well versed in that sort of language or that way of writing. They knew exactly how to play those pieces. But like Mandeville, Hello and Goodbye, they took a little longer to get off the page. But I think through doing that, it was almost more rewarding. That's why those pieces, for me at least, they sort of stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
That, they were challenging, but they came off well, I think.
Yeah. But they were challenging in different ways. If you were to look at Mandeville on paper, even Hello Goodbye, be like, oh, I can play that. And then you actually start playing it, and you're like, actually, I can't play this because it's not just about me playing what's on the page. It's about the phrasing and the stuff that. I mean, it's always about that anyway. But because they're just different, it's a different approach to playing those Mandeville and Hello and Goodbyes. It is a different approach, which required a different approach in rehearsing it. Which I think is why you took us to task on, in depth on those charts. Yeah,
I think like it's easy. I remember Tom and I having a chat before we recorded this, and sometimes we were thinking about, putting ideas to your dad about what pieces might we record. Do you think they'd like this? And I remember we sort of came to that conclusion that actually, when you think about it, the band has always been actually fairly forward thinking in the stuff they've recorded. If you think like it wasn't long after the Gordon Goodwin stuff had kind of burst on the scene and everyone was getting into it.
Yeah.
That the jazz orchestra had recorded some of his arrangements, and then the decade earlier, that Bob Kernow album was so had just become popular. And straight away, your dad had got the charts and was and the band were recording their own versions.
Have you heard?
And going further back before, Bob Mintzer,
exactly,
like the Computer, and what was the other one that we used to do? I can't remember now. But Bob Mintzer brought out an album. Next thing you know, we've got the charts.
Exactly,
we're playing it.
So it felt good that I do think like it was good that I do think there has been a history within the repertoire. While the band definitely sounds fantastic playing, within the sort of the tradition or those fantastic, arrangements by Bob Florence, and it was cool to challenge the band even further and push it a little further than we had before, and do some different pieces, which is why I think Mandeville eventually ended up being on the record.
What is Mandeville a place? What is it?
Not sure. You know,
I've been past a road called Mandeville Road.
Where was that?
London somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mandeville by Patrick Williams, who sadly passed away in the year that we recorded it. Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Let's hope. Well, I hope we did a good version of it. I think we did.